Hello, and welcome to another special pop-up episode of the Bloodstream podcast, produced by Bloodstream Media and Believe Limited, and made possible thanks to our presenting sponsor, Takeda. This episode is also made possible thanks to our segment sponsor, Sanofi. I am your host, patient advocate Patrick James Lynch, and I'm reminding you to please speak with a healthcare professional before making any healthcare decisions. We've got a special episode for you today, a short one though, with basically two topics that we want to cover. The first is the latest from the I'm Fine segment, which has a theme that's of particular interest to me today, and I'm excited to bring it to you. And the second does have to do with our presenting sponsor, Takeda. But first, I need to remind you, dear listeners, that the Bloodstream podcast is indeed made possible thanks to our presenting sponsor, Takeda. Yeah, that's right, Takeda. Takeda's got this website, bleedingdisorders.com, where you can learn all about Takeda's resources for and commitment to the bleeding disorders community. Takeda believes in a world free of bleeds. They told me that. And they are committed in their efforts to offer a wide range of programs and support to help patients throughout their treatment journey, wherever on that journey they may be. And you can learn more by simply visiting bleedingdisorders.com. One more time, that's bleedingdisorders.com. And for their founding and ongoing support of the Bloodstream podcast, I would just like to say thanks, Takeda. So yes, the first thing that I want to get to ahead of I'm Fine does involve Takeda. So, as many of you may have heard, toward the end of last month, there was an announcement about an upcoming discontinuation of two of Takeda's bleeding disorders products, Hemofil M and Recombinate. By now, several organizations throughout the United States and around the world have made statements acknowledging the news. Of course, we wanted to provide you all with an update here on Bloodstream as well. But rather than just read from the press release, I reached out to colleagues at Takeda to see if there was a staff member who could speak with us a bit about this more personally, who could answer a few questions such as why and what does this mean for the patients and caregivers affected. In the interest of clarity, Takeda did not request this opportunity themselves, though I would see nothing wrong with it had they. I requested this because, frankly, I think it's important for a human being from a company to speak to human beings about the products that that company offers, especially when there's an important update and especially when that product is something as important as a treatment for bleeding disorders. Fortunately, Takeda agreed, and during HFA's symposium last week, I sat down with their vice president and franchise head of hemophilia and transplant, Anthea. I'm not even going to try her last name. I'm going to leave that to her. But Anthea's excellent, and she joins us in the interview right now. All right, so I am now joined by my friend at Takeda. I'm going to let you pronounce your full name because I will butcher it. So can you please do that for me?
So the first one's a little easier. It's Anthea.
True.
The second one, Cherednichenko. No, right. Just Anthea's perfect. Yeah.
Anthea I can do. The last name I will just have to keep deferring. And you're new-ish to the role you have at Takeda, but not new to Takeda. So before we jump into the content for today, can you give the audience a little bit of your background with Takeda and the world of bleeding disorders?
Yeah, super. So I've been at the company for 12 years now. I started with Baxter 12 years ago in Australia, you can hear by the accent, and have been with the haemophilia community most of that time, actually. So I was leading a business unit in Australia. I've done global roles. I led Europe and Canada with our hematology business, and now really proud, as I say, to come home the last 18 months to be leading our hematology business here in the US.
Well, it's exciting. I've been working with Takeda as a partner for about that same amount of time, but we've only just met. And I should mention to the audience that this interview today came as a result not of Takeda's being a sponsor of the Bloodstream podcast or a supporter of any Believe Limited's work. It came as a result of my asking if someone, you, would join us to discuss this recent news about some discontinuations. So I want to make that clear for the audience. This was at my request. Because I think it's important that people hear directly from Takeda about this. So what has happened and what does it mean? Let's start there, and then I'll have a few follow-ups for you.
Super. Yeah, thanks, Patrick. And we really appreciate the opportunity to share this news and communicate through this podcast with your audience. So let me start by saying I know this news affects individuals deeply. We have announced that we will be discontinuing recombinant, and Hemophyll M. And I know this is a very personal decision for someone who still relies on these treatments. But to take a step back and articulate a little bit, like, how do we think about this as an organization, and why now? The first consideration is that really just how much the treatment landscape has changed over the last years. So many new options available for patients, and what that has meant is that fewer and fewer people and healthcare professionals around the world are choosing products like recombinant and Hemophyll M. So with so few patients on these therapies now, and many, many good options available, the time came really for us to make this decision. We don't make it lightly. And whenever we are thinking about decisions at Takeda like this, big or small, we use a framework we call PTRB. And we always
love acronyms, don't we?
We love acronyms, particularly in pharma, so many acronyms. So P is around, like, what impact does this have on our patients? What impact does this decision have on the trust and reputation of the company and the industry? And only if we can sort of be comfortable with all of those three parameters will we say, okay, how does this impact, sustainable business for the organization? And again, when you sort of put together that changing landscape, the PTRB framework, our belief that there are other good options available out there, and our mission as an organization to really focus our attention on life-saving, life-transforming medicines, we came to the decision that globally now is the time to talk about discontinuing Hemophyll M and recombinant.
Well, I think to that point about trust and reputation as well, if this is the time, trust involves transparent communication and making sure to communicate directly and clearly. And I noticed the messages from the World Federation, NBDF, HFA, so it was clear that Takeda made a robust effort to communicate to all, myself included, to all the necessary people that this is something that's happening. Please let your members know as soon as possible. What does this mean for the patients, caregivers, HCPs, family members, anyone who is taking one of these products? What does this mean for them?
Yeah, you're right. We did our best. The team internally worked really hard to try and make sure that this was an open, broad, appropriate, early communication to the whole community, the whole global community actually, at once. So no one sort of felt left behind or left out of this important news. What we have communicated is that there will be around, we're saying 16 months, so it's now March 2025, if someone's listening to this, in a few months' time. So we're expecting that by sort of mid next year, June next year, is when our supply would be depleted. We've chosen, and we hope that that's a good amount of time for patients to go and speak to their healthcare professional, perhaps even just at their next visit, at their annual visit, and talk about that transition and what new treatment option might be best for them. Our goal was that we don't want to create an extra burden or concern or worry to have to get in and see a healthcare professional tomorrow. But really, let's be thoughtful. We wanted to be empathetic, understanding that this is not news people will want to hear if they've relied on these products for many, many years, but that give people time to digest the news, get the right treatment advice, and then also try, a new product or maybe different products to find their new home, I guess, in terms of their care.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I would be frustrated if I was taking either one of these products and learned it's being discontinued next month. That would change my whole life. I'd be in a panic. I'd have to make a bunch of phone calls. So to hear that there is a very reasonable timeline, that doesn't necessarily mean if I was a patient on one of these, I'd have to do anything differently today. gives me a bit of peace. I'm not one of these patients, but I try to put myself in those shoes. And if I found out my product was being taken away, knowing I have 12 to 16 months to talk to my doctor, talk to other people I may know who are on it. What are you thinking about? What are you doing? Now, what if somebody wanted to speak to a representative from Takeda? Of course, we always want to recommend people talk to their doctor and treatment professionals. But again, putting myself in these shoes, I may want to talk to either a local rep or somebody else at the company. Can people reach out to folks at Takeda about this? And if so, how?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I'd like to think we have many members of our team that are very close to the community and attend events like this, HFA, and have done for many, many years. So you might know someone already. We have a wonderful group of community education specialists that are working really closely with patients directly, and also with local patient organizations and chapters. So perhaps you have a name of a community education specialist. You could reach out to your local chapter. They might have a name. Or Patrick, contact me. So I'm Anthea from Takeda in hemophilia. You could probably Google me and find my email address, but I think we're going to provide it for the folks anyway. But I'm also here if anyone wanted to connect. I do have a member of the community that I'm speaking with on Monday about this topic. As I say, I'm probably going to say this a few times, we know it at an individual level, this is going to be disruptive. So we really want to make sure that we're here, we're listening, and doing what we can to support, you out there on your journey.
Well, you won't have to spell Anthea's first or last name. It'll be in the program notes. So if you do want to reach out to her, just check the program notes for this episode and you can do that. Thank you for your time. The only question that I want to ask, you kind of referred to this with the reputation and trust part of the process as well. What does this mean for Takeda's standing in the community? Legacy Takeda, going back to the Baxter days, as you well know, you've been along for the ride for over a decade, has a really rich history in the community. And I think I see something like this, and I wonder, does this mean something bigger? Does this mean something more? Is there more news coming? So I guess speak directly to me. What does this mean about Takeda's standing in the community more broadly?
Yeah, we know this will be on the minds of the community. And one thing that we are sort of saying at the moment, we hear a little bit about, is we're trying to also take a moment to be a little proud or celebrate the role these two products have had in the community for 60 and 30 years. It's incredible. So I think when we look back at that and we see how long, we've been able to provide these medicines to patients, I hope that we can have faith that that represents our commitment to this community, and that because of this decision, our commitment doesn't change. We have a portfolio of products that are available to support people with hemophilia, different types of hemophilia, von Willebrand's disease. We have a portfolio in the bleeding disorders community. We're still, investing. We have real-world evidence ongoing. We really are committed to continuing to find innovation and equitable access to care for people living with bleeding disorders. And I hope that they feel that through this news and the way we're showing up for patients through the transition is representative of that commitment that we have today and we have into the future.
Well, I feel that in hearing you say that, and I think about a world where Takeda's name and logo is not so prominent in bleeding disorders, and again, carrying with that logo and name the history through Baxter, Baxalta, Shire. That's not a future I'm very interested in. So it's good to hear you reaffirm that so specifically. I want to again mention to the audience, I asked for this because I think it's important. We don't have products in our community that have been around 30, 60 years. So to hear about a celebration of those products and a wind down in a way that's appropriate, thoughtful, transparent, I don't really think I could ask for more anyway. So I won't assume what anyone's thinking or feeling, but I personally am grateful to you for coming on and would welcome you to join me again down the road, whether it's about this part of the business or some other part of the business. I think people hearing directly from representatives, and especially representatives who, to be honest, are in pretty interesting roles at the company. I'd like to be able to make that a more regular part of what Bloodstream can offer. So open invitation, and we'll find a reason to have you back on again soon. Are there any other options for places people can go to learn more?
Yeah, we have a range of resources available, but your best point of call probably is to go to haemophiliajourney.com, which has lots of information about this news and resources available for patients and healthcare professionals alike.
And it's easy to remember, haemophiliajourney.com. Thanks so much for joining today to discuss this.
Thanks so much, Patrick. I'd love that and look forward to next time.
This is all I've ever known. Is that even
Possible for me?
I don't want to miss anything.
I don't need that. I don't want to acknowledge my pain.
I don't want to get poked with needles.
I don't want that.
There's nothing wrong.
I'm fine.
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 We often cling to what's familiar, even when better options exist. Whether it's outdated treatments, unhelpful coping mechanisms, or emotional shields, we convince ourselves that staying the course is easier than facing the unknown. But at what cost? That's what we explore today on I'm Fine, a segment that is produced in partnership with Sanofi, aiming to challenge entrenched ideas around chronic resiliency and satisfaction with suboptimal outcomes. Sanofi does this by inspiring people with hemophilia to seek education and truly consider the possibilities. Sanofi seeks to expand the idea of what's possible for the hemophilia community and encourages you to take a deeper look at the science behind hemophilia and an important connection between factor activity levels and potential activities at levelsmatter.com. So today we're going to explore why it is that we hold on to what no longer serves us, and how honesty can be a step toward real change. To start off, Michelle Fernandez shares her perspective on the very phrase, I'm fine.
It means I don't have time to go into anything else, so that'll just be the passive thing so that we can go on with things.
What emotions do we shield ourselves from when we say passive things like, I'm fine?
Actually, probably feeling anything. Because whether it's I'm fine for a good reason, then you don't want to go into it. If it's I'm fine because you're covering up something bad, so you're emotionally detached from that word. I think I'm fine doesn't have an emotional attachment to it anymore.
Why does avoiding vulnerability cause detachment?
I think masking vulnerability, it's just a wall that helps you get anything deeper. It's really hard to be vulnerable with people, and a lot of times you put on this front that, again, with the I'm fine, so that people can't see your hurts or your fears or your struggles. There's no truth unless there's vulnerability, because we're not being truthful with what we're going through, what we're feeling. So it's just a wall that gets built up.
Let's take this a step further. Psychologically, suppressing emotions doesn't just numb the pain, it amplifies stress and it chips away at our well-being. Studies show that when we mask our struggles, we don't just isolate ourselves, but we reinforce the damaging belief that vulnerability is weakness, rather than a bridge to connection. So what happens when we build walls instead of bridges? When we choose silence over support? What happens when resilience becomes a lonely battle instead of a shared journey?
It creates isolation. It creates solitude, because the more you tell people you're fine, then they don't ask. And then you end up hiding or shielding yourself from more. And then when you do feel like that wall has a crack, the cracks can just like a dam, you get a little hole in it, and that pressure behind it makes that little hole just explode out when you're least expecting it. And maybe it's not the big things that trigger it because those are easy to hide. It's the small things, and then people don't understand why the small thing caused such a huge gusher in your life.
Think of a dam under pressure. At first, it holds strong. But as the water builds, even the smallest crack can unleash a catastrophic flood. Our emotions work the same way. Suppressing them doesn't make emotions vanish. It just forces them to find another way out, and left unchecked, they manifest as anxiety, burnout, or sudden breakdowns over things that on the surface seem insignificant. but the pressure was always there, waiting for a release.
I went through something this last summer, and I thought was what triggered it was the idea that my son was going to wanted to go to university. And when I couldn't financially figure out how to make it happen, um, it caused me to get emotional, which I still do, because I felt like I had failed him in some way. It caused a huge emotional breakdown for me. And I mean, it's a long story, but it's like what it comes down to is I realized it wasn't that. It was like I was trying to fit him into something that he wasn't instead of just letting him be who he was. And as a mom, I thought it was a failure that I couldn't get him to college, but it was a failure that I was trying to make him fit into somebody else's bubble instead of just letting him be who he was supposed to be. And sometimes if you don't let yourself breathe and let yourself feel things, then you hide those things away. It was hard. I went through something that I never thought I'd ever have a problem with mental health in my life, but I found myself not being able to breathe. I found myself like not being able to drive 20 minutes home from work without breaking down and feeling like, why can't my brain go forward? Why can't my brain keep thinking?
This raises a crucial question. Why do we fear facing our emotions? More often than not, the answer is discomfort. Confronting difficult feelings takes effort. It demands vulnerability. It certainly isn't easy. It forces us to admit that we're not in control of everything and that uncertainty can be terrifying. So instead, we bury, deflect, and push forward until the weight of what we've ignored becomes impossible to carry any longer.
So I think it was, in my case, I know it was a matter of just suppressing so much for so long that that's what caused the dam to break. And it took 3 months for me to figure out how to get over that. Like, I don't remember 3 months of my life. um, but what I learned is transparency and vulnerability and being honest and just being true to who I am and not being afraid to share that with people, because I realized my struggles can help somebody else or identify with them, that they could go through it, because I don't think with mental health, unless you've gone through it, you can truly empathize with somebody.
Society teaches us to wear our resilience like armor, rewarding toughness over transparency. In many cultures, in fact, in many workplaces, and even in many families, struggling in silence is praised, while admitting that we need help is seen as weakness. But at what cost? What does it take to trade suppression for self-acceptance?
So for me, I am very strong in my faith. So prayer was definitely one of those things, but also authenticity and being able to be vulnerable and tell people, like right now talking to you is not something I would ever admit to something, but I realized that break was so hard that if we don't talk about it, I can't be the only one that was feeling that same way. I can't be the only one that everyone thinks has it together. And we all struggle. And if we can't be honest with each other, then we're not really loving each other.
Experts suggest that vulnerability doesn't have to be an all-or-nothing leap. It can start with small steps. Journaling, therapy, or even just an honest conversation with a close friend can create space for healing. And sometimes that first step isn't sharing with others. It's simply admitting to yourself that you're struggling. But in communities where strength is a badge of honor, whatever we think of when we say strength, how often does "I'm fine" become less about reassurance and, frankly, more about denial?
Starting with my own family and my boys with a bleeding disorder, the "I'm fine" is always a way to say I'm normal, that I don't have any struggles. But the "I'm fine" is also with my husband, who, yeah, I'm fine with it that my kids have hemophilia, but there was a point where, they weren't what he thought his sons were going to be like, strong and sports inclined and, invincible. I mean, in turn they are. I mean, because we've done everything we're supposed to, and we've come a long way. But I do see that when you're not invincible and there's definitely something there that you have to take care of, the "I'm fine" is the best way to tell people, like, okay, oh, I see your ankle's swelling. I'm fine. Okay, but your ankle's swollen. I'm fine. I know you're fine, but so I think it's just a way of people not wanting to admit that they have a weakness, an ailment that we all have. I'm fine is the best way, because if you're established in the bleeding disorder community, everybody's fine, right? Because they all know how to handle their bleeding disorder. They're all on the right medication, so they're fine. But truth is, not everybody can infuse the right way. Not everyone's on the same medication. Not everyone bleeds the same way. Not everybody is living the life that they thought they dreamed of. Not everybody is living in the cookie cutter that somebody thought they should be living in. So I'm fine is just a cover up for a lot of things.
This idea goes far beyond medical conditions. The I'm fine mindset runs deep. It can be found in many communities, caregiving, professionals, students, basically anyone conditioned to equate struggle with weakness. But acknowledging hardship isn't failure. It's embracing the full human experience. Why is honesty still seen as a risk? And how do we rewrite that narrative?
I've always lived by don't take my kindness for weakness, because I think being kind to somebody is seeing them where they're at. Not putting an expectation, not telling them where they are, is just seeing them for who they are.
Honesty is often uncomfortable, something we avoid rather than embrace. But what if we saw it not as a risk, but as a source of power? Reframing honesty as a tool for growth, not exposure, shifts how we approach it. When we lean into truth, we create space for support, understanding, and ultimately, healing. We cling to familiar narratives to maintain control, or at least the illusion thereof, to avoid disruption, to convince ourselves we're safe. But familiarity is not the same as fulfillment. By choosing honesty, we don't just break old patterns, we unlock new possibilities. Ones where we're not just surviving, but we're actually living, thriving. So ask yourself, are you holding on to the devil you know? Or are you ready to step into something better?
It's easy to tell people what they want to hear. It's easy to tell people what you want them to perceive you as. It's hard to be truthful. It's hard to be honest. It's hard to drop the mask and say, this is who I am, and love me for who I am.
True resilience isn't about enduring. It's about knowing when to let go. Familiarity may feel safe, but safety isn't the same as growth. The real challenge isn't surviving. It's daring to believe that there's something better beyond the devil you know. Thanks again to Sanofi for supporting the I'm Fine segment and these crucial conversations. Consider your options and visit levelsmatter.com to learn more. Please share this segment, subscribe to the Bloodstream podcast, and thank you for tuning in to I'm Fine. Thank you again to Takeda, our presenting sponsor, to Sanofi for supporting the I'm Fine segment, and for Michelle Fernandez's contributions to today's episode. Amy and I will be back again next Friday, April the 11th, at which time we have a couple of really fascinating and quite different interviews to bring to you. One with some members of the National Youth Leadership Institute from the National Bleeding Disorders Foundation, and one with two incredible maternal health providers here in Los Angeles. I don't want to tell you anything more. You're just going to have to check it out for yourself. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this episode with friends. That'll do it for me. My name is Patrick James Lynch, and until next time, take self-care of yourself. Bye, everybody.